In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to make this nifty folding table. This little table is super cool. You can use it next to the barbecue, as a project table. You can even take it camping. I take mine camping all the time. Did I mention how strong it is? Follow a sequence of construction so that the table will assemble correctly. It will fold up correctly, and more importantly, it will be level when we're finished. Here are all the materials we're going to use for today's project. I have two 2x3s by 8 foot. I have one 1x3 by 8 foot common board. I have a 7/8 inch dowel rod, a 2 foot by 2 foot piece of 15/32 plywood. This is B grade on one side, C grade on the other. I have our favorite wood glue, 1 5/8 screws, and some 3-inch screws. And don't forget the dish soap. What? I'll show you this a little later. Stay tuned to the end of this video and I'll break down the entire cost of this project. So let's turn this into that. To follow our sequence of construction, we're going to cut all 4 legs first. That's what the 2x3s by 8 are for. We're going to get 2 legs and 1 cross piece out of each one. After we cut all 4 legs, we're going to drill the hinge hole through all 4 legs. It's important that the holes line up correctly through the legs for the hinge. So I'll be using the drill press for this. I'll show you a trick I use to match up all 4 holes. We're going to measure and cut all 4 legs. They're 36 inches. All right, we've got all 4 legs cut. We're going to focus on the 2 middle legs, 2 center legs. We're going to build this as a kit. We're going to cut the miter on the bottom. Those are 32 degrees. And I'm going to show you how we measured for these miters. We're going to use our adjustable T-square for this. It has an adjustable protractor on the top. I'll put a link down below so maybe you can pick up one for yourself. They're really inexpensive and they really do a great job. As I said, we're going to focus on these inside legs and we're going to build this as a kit, but we'll get the miters cut first. To make these first cuts, we're just going to set our saw up at 32 degrees and we'll cut the bottoms of both inside legs. As I said before, the bottom miters are easy. They're 32 degrees. We need to get our top miter on, and I have the luxury of making my pattern because I've already made this table before. Let me show you how I got these measurements. To get our miters marked for the tops of the inside legs, which are identical incidentally, we're going to use our locking protractor here, and this is a 32 degree miter here, and it's 3/4 of an inch long, so I just mark it with that. Now this other miter is also 32 degrees, but it's 32 degrees from this plane. Again, we'll just take our protractor and we'll mark that angle. Now we're going to cut it on the miter saw. As you can see, I've got them both marked. We're going to cut the little 3/4 of an inch miter first. Just like so. Again, just like so. Cutting this next miter is a little more tricky. I have a piece of sacrificial lattice that I'm going to use for this. I'm going to put this against the backstop, and when I do that, that matches this plane and makes this the 32 degrees. And we already have our saw set at 32 degrees. We just need to be careful when we cut this board. That's got our angles all cut. Let's do the next one. Again, to cut the next one, we're going to use the same process. We have our sacrificial lattice that we're going to use against the backstop. Again, that matches this plane with this plane so that we can get our 32 degree cut. And that's just how easy it is. The inside legs are cut. Let's cut the outside legs. Again, at the bottom, it's going to be 32 degrees. That's going to be what touches the ground. And then the tops on the outside legs are just rounded. Same process as before. If you see here with our protractor, these are 32 degrees. We're just going to set the saw for 32 degrees. Cut the next one. And just like the bottom two, these are going to be identical as well. Here I am using a spray paint cap to mark the radius at the top of the outside legs. This cap is the perfect size for marking these 2x3s. I am using the miter saw to nip the corners along the pencil marks that I just made. Next, I will sand off the rest of the radius. The belt sander is perfect for rounding off the ends of these legs. All 4 legs are cut. Now I'm going to drill my hinge holes. Unfortunately, my drill press doesn't have enough travel to do 2 boards at one time, so we're going to have to do them one at a time. I've set up a fence on the back to find the center of the holes. I'm going to drill 1, and then I'll show you my trick for transferring the hole marks to the next board. The position for the center hinge hole is 19¼ inches up from the bottom. Now that we've got 1 hole in one of the center legs, I've matched them up, and now I'm going to clamp them together. And with my hand drill and a 7/8 bit, I'm simply going to mark my hole location on the next board. Now I've got my mark, and I can simply continue down through the next board. You can see they're perfectly lined up now. Before I assemble my 2 center legs into this center leg unit, I need to transfer the hole onto the other 2 legs so that when we put it all together, our hinge holes all line up. So to do that, I'm going to use the same method. I've got my clamp, I've clamped the 2 legs together, and we're going to take the hand drill. All right, we've got our transfer mark through. Let's finish this one off. And we'll repeat the process one more time for the other side. We've got the inside leg and the outside leg clamped together. That way we can transfer that mark through, and we'll finish it off on the drill press. All right, so using that process, we were able to line up all of the hinge holes through all the legs. So our next step is to take the 2 center legs, and we're going to build this center leg unit. Okay, the next phase is to build this inside leg unit. And I've taken the 1x3x8 common board, and I cut 11-inch pieces on the miter saw. I cut 3 of them, and they're all 11 inches long, and those are going to be the rails for inside this unit. For the top one, I actually had a piece of 2x3 left, and I did a little custom cut here. This is that 32-degree angle. I cut this off at 11 inches on the miter saw, and then I simply ran it through the table saw with that miter on the top edge, leaving the 3/4 inch, the same as the inside leg. We're going to use that instead of the 1x3. To put this together, I'm using my 24-inch clamps and some of my favorite glue here. We're going to get this in there. Tighten this clamp up. And we'll tighten him down. I'll do the same in the center, and I'll do the same on the end. We'll make sure I get it covered good. This is going to be strong. Next, we're going to use 3-inch screws. We're going to screw this leg unit together. I'm going to drill some pilot holes with my countersink. That's got all the holes drilled. Now, let's put in all of our 3-inch screws. This is where the trick with the soap comes in. We're simply going to spray the screws. And with a little bit of soap on there, the screws are going to go in much easier. right, we've given it time for the glue to set up, and we've got our screws in there. And with those 3-inch screws, this is not going anywhere. So there it is. There's the center leg portion. So the next step is to finish the outside legs. We'll get that going next. We're going to cut the hinge for this, and it's going to be 17 inches long. With our hinge cut 17 inches, that's going to allow the hinge to go all the way through. And when we put the outside legs on, it'll be flush with the outside on both sides. So our next step is going to be to assemble the top, and we're going to need to cut our supports for the top. Right, so that's got the center 2 legs connected in that center leg piece. Everything's going to kind of hinge off of that. So we've got our 2 outside legs. The next part is going to make the top with the supports. And these also have a hinge, so we're going to need to drill holes through our supports and through the tops of our outside legs. Now, these supports are going to be 17 inches long. And remember, the scraps from our legs is what's actually going to make the supports for the top. So we'll cut those 17. We're going to round off one side, and then we're going to put our hinge hole in. All right, that's got both supports cut off at 17 inches. Next, we'll cut small 45s, and then we'll round off the edges. Once again, we're going to use the belt sander. All right, so that's got our top supports rounded out. Now we're going to drill the hinge holes for this and the hinge holes on the outside legs, and that'll complete the support for the top. For the hinges for the top, we've measured down 1 inch. So let's get those drilled, and then we'll transfer the mark onto the support. We're going to be using the drill press for these holes like we did the others. I forgot to mention that we're using the Forstner bits. These are pretty awesome for cutting holes. I'll leave a link down below. Just like we did on the bottom hinge hole, we're going to transfer this mark over onto the support in the same way. We want to get the orientation correct. This is how it's going to open. So this is how we're going to clamp them together. All right, we've got them clamped together. We're just going to transfer this hole right onto the support. And then we'll finish it off on the drill press. All right, with our hole transferred onto the support, we're just going to finish this off with the drill press. You can see with both holes matched up, it hinges perfect, just like it does on the table. Next, we're going to do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll start putting the table together. Before we can start putting this thing together, we need to cut the top. We're going to cut it down to 20 inches, and we're going to leave it the 24 wide that it already is. And for that, we're going to use the table saw. I've already got my fence set so that I can end up with a 20-inch piece. While we have the table saw out, I'm going to rip my scrap down to 1.25 inch strips. And those we're going to use for the supports on the bottom. Now that we've got all of our pieces cut, let's start the assembly process. At this point in the build, I've made all the components: the tabletop and supports, the 2 outside legs, the inside leg unit, and stabilizer straps. Now it's time to assemble our table. To begin our assembly, we need to fasten the hinges, and then we'll move on to attaching the top. I've centered the center hinge, and now we need to glue it to the outside legs, and then we'll do the same to the hinges for the top. Now that those are installed, we're going to pin this in place with a couple of finish nails. First, we'll drill some pilot holes. Now we'll do the same for the hinges for the top. Let's drill some pilot holes and we'll pin them. Next, we'll move on to laying out the top so we can get it attached. I've made some layout marks on the bottom side of our tabletop so that we'll know where to attach it to the supports. I've come in 1 7/8 inches on both sides, and I've made a 1/2 inch reference mark on the front, and I'll show you what that's for in a little bit. Next, we're going to attach the table supports to the hinges. To prepare the tabletop for attachment, I'm going to use this strip of plywood in our clamps. Along our 1 7/8 inches line, I'm going to attach the strip of plywood. This is going to act as a block so that when I push it against the support, it will already be in place. I've prepared an alignment mark at 17.5 inches up from the bottom. That's where the leading edge of the table is going to rest. With our strip of plywood now acting as a stop and our 17.5 inch alignment line, now we're ready to drill some holes and attach the tabletop. As you can see on the tabletop, I've made alignment marks. And I've also made some marks where we're going to drill our pilot holes. I'm going to use my counterset bit. These holes are every 2 inches. Our screws are 1 5/8 inches. For attaching the table, the screws are only 1 5/8 inches, so we won't be needing any soap. I'm also not going to glue, just in case this tabletop ever needs replaced again. Other side. This next piece that I'm going to cut is the most important piece of the entire table. It's this keeper, and when the table's completely open, it's what holds the entire table together. So let's get this thing cut. We're going to cut this 10 3/4 just to give ourselves a little bit of room. While we still have the saw out, we'll finish up by cutting our stabilizer straps, and that was from the scrap from our plywood. I've got them marked already. I've got 45 degrees on the angle coming across, and we'll cut this for width on the bottom. All right, I've glued and screwed the stabilizing straps into place. Now let's get the next piece going. Next, we're going to attach the keeper. We're going to be using the 3-inch screws, so we'll use the soap trick for this. We're also going to use some glue. I have a little curve in the tabletop, so I'm going to use some clamps when I attach this. Let's drill some holes. We'll use some soap. Perfect. The last thing we're going to do is give this thing a once over with the sander. That way there's no splinters. This particular sander has a brand new platen on it. I made a video not too long ago on how to replace it. Check that one out. And for the final test, it looks like this table's pretty level. Here's our little table all complete. This little thing is awesome. It folds up completely flat. You can toss it in your car. You can throw it in the back of your truck. You can take it camping. I use mine around the shop all the time. I'm glad you watched, and I hope you'll watch again.